So if you have an old stand of alfalfa, it's lived its life and now you want to get rid of it, you want to retire it. Traditionally, if you were a conventional till grower, you would mouldboard plow that in the fall, secondary till it in the spring and plant corn or soybeans or whatever you wanted to do the next year. And if you were a minimum till, conventional till producer, couldn't use the mouldboard plow, the light tillage that you might use isn't good enough to take out an old stand, you'd rely on glyphosate in the fall to control that stand of alfalfa, plant something the next spring. But in the last 4 years, there's been glyphosate tolerant alfalfa introduced into Ontario. So that takes glyphosate out of the picture if you want to be a minimum till, conventional till producer. What can you use to retire an old stand? Well, thankfully, a lot of the glyphosate product labels give some suggestions. And there's 3 different products they suggest, 6 different tank mixes. But when you look at them, a couple of things become very clear. Number one, there's quite a bit of difference in price per acre between treatments, as little as $7 an acre, all the way up to $40 an acre. So my first question is there any difference in the level of glyphosate tolerant alfalfa control you'll get with either of those treatments? Because all things being equal, I'd probably want to use a $7 an acre treatment. The second thing that becomes interesting is we're relying largely on 2,4-D, dicamba, and clopyralid, the active ingredient in Launtrell, to kill this glyphosate tolerant alfalfa. Those are herbicides that are extremely sensitive to cooler temperatures at and after application. So how does timing in the fall affect control? And then lastly, one of those active ingredients, clopyralid, it has some recropping considerations, especially if we're going to soybeans or dry beans. And so how does that affect our decision making in terms of treatment? So this is a trial here at the Aurora Research Station where we tackle all 3 of those things. Difference in efficacy between these 6 different treatments, timing of control, does it affect the control of those 6 treatments? And then lastly, is there any recropping concerns, especially going into legumes like soybeans, that we need to be concerned about? So here's our first application, early fall. What's noteworthy about the early fall application is for the next 7 days after application, we had air temperatures in the day that approached the mid-teens, high teens, and our lows at night never got below 6 or 7 degrees. So kind of ideal weather for these types of herbicides, 2,4-D, dicamba, clopyralid. Bottom line is all these treatments worked really well. Whether that was 2,4-D ester on its own at $7 an acre, or whether it was a mixture of 2,4-D and dicamba and clopyralid and maybe a bit more expensive. So regardless of price, all these treatments early fall did a very good job of controlling glyphosate resistant alfalfa. So we just came from the early fall application. All 6 treatments worked wonderfully to control glyphosate tolerant alfalfa. Really no difference, they worked beautifully. I'm standing now in the middle of our late fall application, same 6 treatments, and this is the part I find most fascinating about the trial. It almost looks like we didn't apply anything here. The control is not acceptable at all. And so what's the difference? So the main difference is that air temperature following application. So the early fall applications, we had nice warm air temperatures for days after application. Once we got to the end of October, we only got to daytime highs at around 5-6 degrees Celsius, a lot of days at around 0 degrees Celsius. And those products just can't get in the plant and do their job. And so we're left with a pretty disappointing stand of alfalfa that hasn't been fully killed. So now we got to look at saying, well, if we're in this situation, if we can't get good weather in the fall, we got to wait to the spring to manage this glyphosate tolerant alfalfa. So we just came out of that treatment in the late fall application where it was getting too cold to get meaningful control of that glyphosate tolerant alfalfa. So you would wait off till you got warmer conditions in the spring. So now I'm standing in the middle of our spring applied treatments and we're back to those same 6 treatments, all looking great, and that's because we had good warm weather after application. That's the key to success with killing glyphosate tolerant alfalfa, regardless of what product you use. Now the dilemma here becomes is once we go into the spring, now we have some recropping concerns, especially if we're going to soybeans or edible beans. And so we have treatments here where we have no soybeans coming up. And that's because if we're using things like dicamba or clopyralid, the active ingredient in Launtrell, there's some concerns, especially especially with soybeans and dry beans. So it really kind of narrows us to really only being able to use 2,4-D ester in the spring if we want to plant a bean crop like soybeans or dry beans. But otherwise, it was wise to wait off until spring if we couldn't hit that early fall application, because here we got great control again, and that's what we want to do with glyphosate tolerant alfalfa.